Hello, and my name's Robbie from the Bikepackist. In this video, I'm going to be telling you how to go from a bikepacker to an ultra cyclist. I'm going to give you all the top tips you need to take your adventure cycling to the next level. So before we start, let's get the basics right. So what is bikepacking and what is ultra cycling? So bikepacking is where you grab a few things, you chuck them on the bike and you go on a leisurely tour from one place to another, where you're not really in a rush, you're just enjoying some nice downtime on the bike. Ultra cycling, on the other hand, is a very different beast. It is essentially bikepacking, but you're racing. So it's all about getting from point A to point B as quickly as possible and typically going through many different checkpoints. A good example of an ultra cycling race is the Transcontinental, where people have to go from one side of Europe to the other through 4 checkpoints without any support or help. So how do you go from being a bikepacker to an ultra cyclist? So I actually started bikepacking a decade ago. I was typically going into Europe, going from one country to another. I wasn't really in any rush. I just had a goal of where I wanted to be, and I'll probably aim for around 50 to 70 miles a day. When I got a little bit more into it and a little bit better at it, I decided to start ultra racing. So I was going into races where people were covering between 150 to 300 miles per day. And it was a really difficult change for me because I actually thought I was pretty skilled as a bike packer. Then I got into ultra racing and realized that I was just happy to finish a race. Talk about competing, that was a totally different story. Throughout the years, I got better and better at it and ended up in many races finishing in the top 10, which I'm insanely proud of and I continue to race to this day. In this video, I want to give you the biggest lessons that I had to learn along the way. The ones that I wish I could go back 8 years, 10 years ago and tell myself, Rob, you need to do this. So here's what you need to know. So the first thing to mention is time off the bike. It needs to be kept to an absolute minimum. So if you're bikepacking, you can afford to stop for an hour or two and chill out and have a long meal, a few coffees, great, that's fine. Ultra cycling, you can't afford to do that. You think about the shop, you go in, knowing what you want to buy, pack your bags and literally get on as soon as possible, preferably eating on the bike. The same goes with sleeping too. If you're camping rough, you want to quickly get your stuff out and get to sleep as soon as possible so you can wake up and get on. If you're going into a hotel, you literally want to get in, wash, eat, sleep, and wake up and get out as soon as possible. You can lose hours each day just by wasting time off the bike. Try it. If you take a stopwatch while you're bike packing, click it every time you're off the bike, you'll realize that you can probably end up losing 4 or 5 hours of time that you actually thought you were being quite efficient, when, quite frankly, it's just lost time that could have put you 40, 50 miles in front of where you were on that day. Next we have essentials only. So when you're bikepacking, you can afford to take a few more things. You can pack your bags a bit heavier and you can get on with it and have maybe 2 or 3 different jackets that you're going to wear throughout your trip. When you're ultra cycling, you really want to keep everything as minimal as possible. So for me personally, I think about what I'm going to need, what temperatures it's going to be, and literally just take the bare minimum. You want to keep your setup as light as possible. And the worst thing is getting to the end of an ultra cycling race and you've taken a load of kit that you haven't used and realize that was just dead weight. Obviously there's some things such as derailleur hangers that you're going to have to take but you might not need. But if you end up taking 2 or 3 changes of clothes and 2 or 3 jackets, you are just weighing yourself down terribly and making it such hard work for yourself. So next we have bike fit and adaptations. So I highly recommend a bike fit for any cyclist, whether you be a bike packer, road racer, ultra cyclist, whatever. But when it comes to ultra cycling, it is vital. So if you want to win a race, you're going to be in that saddle 16, 17 hours a day. So if you're not comfortable, it's going to be a really miserable experience and it's just going to end in injuries. So I'm really hot on bike fit. I've even done a bike fit course as well. So whenever I do a race, I think about what hurt me on the race before and how I can adapt my bike to fit me better. If you haven't done a bike fit course, I recommend going to a professional. So after every race, I think about where I got any pain and any adaptations I can make, and I'm constantly improving my fit over time. It's really easy to finish a race and be like, oh, I got to the end in this place, and just forget about that you had chronic back pain the whole time. Things need to be approached. You need to keep improving what you're doing, and the bike fit is a really big part of becoming a better bike packer and ultra cyclist. Next, we have performance components. So when bike packing, you can really get away with anything. You can use really budget group sets, budget bikes, because if you're not in a rush, being a little bit heavier and having things a little bit less aerodynamic doesn't really matter. When it comes to ultra cycling though, you really can get some massive benefits by being on performance components. Take my bike in the background, for example. It's a gravel bike, great geometry for bike packing, Yolio G21. But what makes this really special is it's a carbon frame and forks, it's got carbon wheels, carbon handlebars, it's super light, and I've kept everything as minimal as possible. So my setup originally when I first started bike packing was like 18 kilos without food and water. Now it's down to like 11, 12. That's 6 kilos difference. So 6 kilos is literally 6 litres of water. So imagine carrying, that's probably 1.5 litres there. Imagine carrying 6 bottles of water extra. That's a big difference. So over an hour, it could be an extra mile, 2 miles, which over a whole race of maybe 80 hours ride time, that's a lot of mileage, and you can save yourself literally a day on a week's race by having some really top-notch components. I appreciate it's not in everyone's budget, but it does make a difference. And if you really want to be podiuming ultra cycling races, then having the bike to do it is a big factor. Hello guys, so we're halfway through the ultra cycling tips. If you're enjoying them, then make sure to drop us a like and a comment below, and also add yourself to the channel subscribers. So then we have route perfecting. So when you're bike packing, you can really be creative with your route and make sure that you go through towns and cities because you're not in too much of a rush. When it comes to ultra cycling, it's a little bit different. Some races have a set route and others you plan yourself. But once you've got that route, it's really important to do something with it. So before every race, what I like to do is look at the route, think about where there's going to be hotels where I typically plan to be sleeping and mark them on a map. And I also want to do the same with shops and put their opening times down. This takes so much stress out of the ride, and trust me, it makes such a difference. So for example, I was in the race around the Netherlands a few years back. What I did was I pinpointed all the shops, when they were opening, when they were closing, and I also put some hotels down on there as well. I knew exactly where I could get food and water and how much I needed to take, and I also knew where I was going to be able to sleep at night. I had some injuries on that race, but I still got to the end, but that was so helpful because it was just one less thing to worry about. And when you're absolutely knackered and you've been up for, nearly 2 days riding, it really does help not to have to think about stuff like that. Just get your map out, there's the pin, there's the times the shop's open, that's what you're gonna need. So next we have mental toughness. So when you go bike packing, it's all very chilled, it's a holiday, it's relaxed, it's great. Yes, you've got places to be, but you can be adaptable, you can even jump on a train and skip bits if you want to. It's a holiday. When it comes to ultra cycling, it's a little bit different. It's hard work and you are digging into those pedals all day, and all you're thinking about is getting as far as you can in front of people behind you or on the route you're on. And for me personally, I found a really big difference in how mentally tough you needed to be. Some people naturally are just super mentally tough and just get to ultra cycling and it just works. Other people like myself aren't, and that's something that grows with experience. So when you're ultra cycling, things are going to happen which aren't going to be ideal. So it could be 3 in the morning in an absolute massive storm and you keep getting punctures. Your lights are running low on battery. Things can get really stressful, but you've just got to be mentally tough and you've just got to see, okay, this is the situation I'm in and this is the solution. It's really easy to get caught up in it and get really stressed, and everything's just going to get even worse. Being mentally tough and resilient to tough situations goes such a long way, but it's a very hard thing to teach. A lot of it comes with experience, like I say. You've just got to think outside the box, and I always say seeing yourself as a different person and giving them advice has always really helped me mentally, because then it just takes the emotion out of the situation. Nutrition. So I could talk about this all day long. Even when it comes to bike packing, nutrition is vital. You need to be hammering those calories in to make sure that you're happy and you're riding strong all the time. When it comes to ultra cycling, it's a different beast. So just say, for example, you're riding 15 hours a day and burning roughly 500 calories an hour. That's 7,500 calories. Plus your daily amount, I'm a man, so it's 2,500. And then you've probably got some calories there for recovery on top, and because your metabolism is probably going through the roof because you're cycling all day, you're going to need a lot of calories. So let's say roughly I'm going to need a minimum of 12,000 calories a day. That's really difficult to get in. That's like 50 Mars bars, And if someone said to me, eat 50 Mars bars a day, I would be so ill. So just practicing nutrition before you go goes a really long way. So knowing what you can eat big quantities of, knowing what's got a lot of calories in, knowing how to add calories to stuff really helps. It's really good to beforehand sit down and say, right, I need to get in 7,000 calories on a day. How am I going to do that? Right, I really like bread. Let's double the butter on everything. Am I going to take some Snickers bars? Do I like energy gels? What can you do to get all those calories in without making yourself feel poorly? Nutrition's a really big thing, and honestly, it's always going to be an ongoing battle, and it always has been for me. I could be so much better at it, but it's something I really highly recommend doing a bit of research in and just seeing what works for you and what doesn't before you go ultra cycling. Bike packing, you can get away with being a little bit hungry at times or overeating. Ultra cycling, the stakes are just so much higher and you just need to eat so much more. It's got to be right. And finally, we have training hard. So when it comes to bike packing, all I used to do was get a load of miles under my belt and boom, I'll go away and bike packing would be pretty much fine, but I would be aching along that trip, like most people do. When it came to ultra cycling, I found to really compete in these races and to be near the front, you really have to take your training to the next level. So not only do you have your base miles that you need to do, but you also should be getting on like a turbo trainer or doing some power sessions to make sure that you overload those legs and you get stronger, maybe a higher FTP. On top of that, you also can think about doing some cross training. That really helps. So for me, stretching, so I became more flexible, really helped my comfort. And strength training really stopped me from aching as bad as I was before when I was bike packing. So for me at the minute, getting ready for a race, I think about base miles, high power sessions, strength training, and stretching. Quality over quantity. I train 10 to 12 hours a week, and that's roughly about enough for me. Before, I used to train 20 hours a week, bike packing just base miles, and I feel as though I was only getting 70% of what I do now for much less time. So you gotta train hard and you gotta train smart. So thanks for taking the time to watch our video today. If you've got any tips that you want to add, make sure to drop them in the comments below. And before you go, make sure to subscribe to the Bikepacker channel. We have such a cool archive of videos that we're building. You've got 20 top tips for beginner bike packers. We've got some awesome stuff about riding at night. Make sure to check out the channel and we're going to catch up soon. Stay cool.